Well, thank you so much for being here once again on another episode of A Legacy of Love, Un Legado de Amor. And I must say, a couple of days ago, I was talking to this very special man, and I love his story. I love the passion that he has behind that story for Christ. And with that said, his name is Tom Snow. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, well, we would love to hear a little bit about you um, and your story, what you do for a living, what you've done. Um, share that with us if you don't mind.
Sure. I've walked with the Lord for 55 years now by His grace. For 45 years, I've owned a software design company. Now I'm semi-retired, writing books. Um, First book I started over 40 years ago, set it down because it wasn't God's timing. Picked it up 2 years ago after having congestive heart failure when the Lord said, now it's time. So that was the first book that was just published last December, and I just published another book this month. So we can talk about those a little later if you like. So yeah, it's my life has been one. You want me to back up to how I met the Lord, and or
But of
what would
course,
you?
feel comfortable to share as much as you want to share and where you were at before the Lord, because we all have a very different story before God comes into our lives. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to feel connected with your story because your life changes completely when Christ isn't in you. Even the way that you are with your neighbor, with friends, with family. So, of course, we would love to hear that story because it's a very powerful one.
Very good. Yeah, I know that your podcast deals with folks going through a lot of trauma.
Hmm.
And your trauma, my trauma, everyone's trauma might be different, but we still need the same Lord to heal us from the inside
Amen.
out. And that part will be common in the end.
Yes, it will.
My trauma started as a teenager. Um, I was uh, very much into math and science. I had a father who the only way you could have his attention was to sit at the table with him as uh, from knee high to a grasshopper. And if I wanted to learn math and science, he was a double major engineer,
Uh,
double masters. If I would want his attention, that's how I got it. So my two older brothers, they didn't get that attention, and I wanted it, so I would sit there and learn, far beyond my years, and didn't play with children my own age because I was just, that's how you get the attention of the one you want, right? My family, they didn't show love. If my father wasn't mad at you, then you knew he loved you, right? You were accepted. Uh, and so my mother was maybe the only source of love that actually showed love. This is growing up in the 60s. And uh, so as I say, math and science were kind of my big thing. And to impress my father, maybe for my own ego, I started doing science fair projects in my high school that would, do something so different that it would take me to the state science fair to win. Like that was my
wow.
ego and my goal. And I was doing that. And this one year, I studied about asbestos. This is back in the 60s. And asbestos was common for brake shoes. Like in cars, from the time cars started, probably
Mhm.
from the 1900s up through the 1970s, maybe the 80s, asbestos was the main lining of a brake shoe because it was so hard. It could handle the heat, 900 degrees in the brakes, you know, and so it was used. Well, we know nowadays asbestos, we treat that like if you have it in a ceiling tile, once again, fire retardant, that's why they put them in ceiling tiles. Um, if a tile breaks, they call hazmat in because they're afraid of one little fleck of asbestos dust getting in your lungs. And the study of asbestos is it doesn't it doesn't cause the diseases directly. What it does actually, just the little fibers get inside your lung. Each fiber will destroy one areole inside your lung. So you only have so many areole and 600,000, but still doesn't take 600,000 fibers to kill you. Well, I was studying this and science, there were studies going on. They didn't have the internet. You had to actually go into a library and study.
Yes.
And so, but yeah, I did studies on this and I started doing the math and looking at all the asbestos in the brakes. And it's like there were 600 million, I mean, 60 million tons of brake dust going into the air per year. And we're breathing this. Now, we freak out nowadays on a ceiling tile. We're growing up breathing this stuff. And so I wanted to create an invention that would encapsulate around the brake system of each wheel on the car. And as you drove down the road, it was sealed and it would take the air as passed through and gather all that dust and put it into a bag that was disposable at the back and the end. And so that was my invention, and I created it and uh, went to the state science fair and won that, went all the way up
Wow.
for this invention. My father took me to go see if we could get it patented. It was potential patent, and all that sounded great. Only problem was this: I was playing with a deadly agent, right? That destroys the lung. And the result of asbestos, it causes asbestosis, pneumoconiosis, which is where the fibers destroy the lungs,
Mm.
but it ends up causing cancer and heart disease and all these things as the byproduct. Well, so God had blessed me with a lot of smarts, but I didn't have any common sense. Okay. And the common sense was gone. My ego was I wanted to create this invention, impress my father, win the state science fair. My own ego, maybe create an invention, you know what I'm saying? So all that. So what I had done was I created this device, had it in the basement, went to the local brake shops and gathered bag after bag of asbestos dust. It was just laying around all in the brake shops, right? They don't
Mm.
care. Nobody was worried about it in that day. So I had gather up pound after pound, bag after bag, bring it home, run it through my invention, clouds of dust in the air because it wasn't sealed or perfect yet, right? It wasn't I'm a kid. I'm a teenager. I didn't have, everything to create all I needed to create. So my mother being my cheerleader, she came downstairs. My parents used to work 16-hour days, and would come when she had a chance, and she would be like, cheer me on my invention, and that was the source of love, made me happy. Well, the next year, my mother gets cancer, and that cancer riddles throughout her whole body,
Mm.
and it goes to a full hysterectomy, a double mastectomy, goes into her lymph node system, deposits in her liver, and it killed her. And I watched her go down for a year and a half and now all of a sudden my ego and my invention meant nothing
Yes.
because I was killing and killed, felt the guilt of the world that I had just killed my mother, the only source of love in the family. And that was beyond what a teenager can handle. I'm not sure an adult can handle that much guilt. And so I just couldn't handle it. And so my mother passes, and 1 month after she passes, I felt a rock hard tumor about the size of a walnut in the middle of my gut,
Wow.
probably about where my liver would be. And I knew because I knew because I knew it was cancer, that I now
Mm.
had that cancer. And I felt that I wasn't going to tell anyone because I felt I deserved it. I deserved to die. I killed my mother. I had the guilt of the world that I killed her, and
Mm.
therefore I deserved to die. Now, I grew up and we grew up in denominational churches. They didn't preach the gospel. I didn't know about meeting the Lord. I just believed God was up there somewhere. I didn't know until even a couple years later that I was a full-blooded Jew from both sides of the lineage, mother and father, but they had hidden that because of a whole line of persecution and murder in the family by Christians killing the Jews from Tsar Nicholas in Russia to Kaiser Wilhelm in Austria to Hitler in World War II. And
Mhm.
so at the time of Hitler, my parents hid and they moved from where they lived with all the Jewish families, moved to Texas on the border, Brownsville, Texas, ready to cross over in case, because in that day, uh, Hitler had spies in America looking for
Mhm.
Jews that, and they had a whole history of watching their families being murdered by Kaiser Wilhelm being Christian. Everyone always, Hitler said he was a Christian, right? People can use words. Satan can say what he wants, and people under the influence of the ruler of this world can say all kinds of horrid things. So, because of fear, I didn't even know that I was a Jew. So, I grew up in denominational churches, and along the way, and my mother and father had just hidden, and they said, had told it the families, we're going to pretend we're Christians, and if you can't accept that, don't come around. But they were hiding. Well, long story. There's a lot of story that goes with that. That'll be in one of my next books called Breaking the Curse of the Generations. Got a whole lot of nice, neat stuff to tell about that, but not today. That would take up more time than we have.
Well, you could tell us a little bit about where to purchase that book, where it's going to be available, when it's going to be available, because
Right.
definitely we would love to buy it.
Okay. Well, I'm sure it'll be on Amazon and all the physical books are right now, both of them are on Amazon and the uh, ebooks, are available on Kindle and Apple and Kobo and for both the books. I have the audio book done on the first book, but I don't have it done on the second one. So for those with audio, you can get the first one. Well, anyway, we can give you, I'm sure you can put the link to my website and or the links to the Amazon sites, you know, in the description.
Yes, share that information. I bet there's going to be a lot of people interested in your books.
Yeah. So anyway, I grew up in denominational churches. Well, along the way, my mother being, even though she was Jewish, hiding as being a Christian, actually met the Lord.
Amen.
and and I didn't know that till after she passed. But all I knew was she was not afraid of dying. At 45 to 47, going through this cancer, she was not afraid in a moment, and that helped me. But it scared me because I didn't know where I was going. And when I felt this rock hard tumor, I was like, I believe God's up there somewhere. He's big, he's up there, but how, where am I going? And I'm gonna go. I know I'm going. And I know a lot of these things will probably seem like, how did I know these things? But I had a praying mother. And a praying mother, and a praying relative is a wonderful thing.
Amen.
And so she prayed for her boys. I'm the youngest of three. And so Um, but as I said, I felt this rock hard tumor in my gut, and I knew because I knew because I knew, just like as we as Christians nowadays can know by the Spirit of God. I had a praying mother, and I knew it was cancer, but I wasn't going to tell anybody because I didn't deserve to live. That's the guilt of the world that was
Hmm.
on me that I had no right to live. I just killed the only love in my life, my mother. I have no rights. So as time continues on for the next 4 months, I began to see a vision. Now, we as Christians can see visions. God can show us a vision. I wasn't a Christian yet. I had not asked the Lord into my life. But every day I'd come home from high school and I would sit in my family room and I would watch a vision of clouds in time. And they were little puff clouds from one end of the horizon to the next. And they were just slowly puffing along, moving along. And on top of each cloud was a scene. And I would look to the furthest cloud on the left and I would watch as it slowly moved over, slowly, 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 got overhead. Then I'd look at the scene on top of that cloud to see what it was. And the scene was life going on without me.
Hmm.
And then I'd watch that cloud till it went totally off to the horizon on the right, then stare to the left, watch that cloud till it got overhead, and I would look on top and see a scene in life going on without me. And it scared the bejeebies out of me because it told me eternity was going to happen and I was not the center of life. Life was going on without me. It had nothing to do with me. And so I was just scared. Where am I going? Like I deserve to die, but in the next world, am I going to go get to heaven? And so I watched this every day. Once again, a praying mother, but I could close my eyes and watch this for hours just passing by. And I was so good in school, I could ace anything, so I didn't have to study. So I'd come home, I didn't really have to study. God blessed me with a smart brain, no common sense, you know. Used to be a photographic memory. At this age, I'm just glad if I have a memory. So,
Yes.
so much for the grace of God. Well, anyway, so I'd watched this, and so one day I was sitting there in my family room, and as I was watching this eternal progression of clouds, I heard the audible voice of God. One and only time I've ever heard it. All we as believers can hear the still small quiet voice of God when we ask
Yeah.
him to come in. We can all hear the still small quiet voice, the Holy Spirit inside. But I got the audible and it filled the room and it rumbled the room. It sounded like roaring thunder, rivers of living water flowing all around me. And yet it was filled with love. So much love that you could not deny. It's one thing the devil can't do. He can't reproduce God's love nor God's peace. The devil can lie about a lot, but he can't do that one. And so I'm sure there's plenty of people get the wrong vision. This one was God, truly him himself. And he said two things. He said, I love you, and someday I'll provide your perfect mate for you.
Wow.
I love you rang through me. I was feeling that love. It was so deep. It was so massive. It was so overwhelming. It was so mind-blowing. Yes, he loves me. The God of the universe, who's I always thought was way out there, just visited little old me in my room, in my house, and just showed me that he loved me. I don't know why, because I don't deserve to live, but the God of the universe just told me he loved me, and I knew it. The second part, someday I'll provide a perfect mate for you. I just pushed that aside because that made no sense because I was shortly doomed to be 6 feet under. So that part, kind of like, well, push that aside because, let's go back to the love of God. So it's like, how do I reach that love? And that became the cry of my life. And I quit seeing the clouds, they weren't passing by anymore. Now I'm just hungering. How do I find this true and living God who just spoke to me? God, don't you know I don't have much time left? It's like, seriously now, let's talk, you
Yeah.
know. And inside of me, this thing that was the size of a walnut was growing and growing and growing. It eventually grew larger than a football, hard as a rock in my abdomen.
Oh, wow.
And that I was in sports, but I was off season at that point, so I gained a bunch of weight to hide it. I didn't want anyone to know my secret because, as I said, my guilt said I deserved to die. I don't deserve to live being so horrid to the only one who showed me love, my mother. So, but yet God just showed me love. So how do I reach you? Because I'm about to go hit eternity, you know, how do I do that? Well, about a month later, my brother Bruce, middle brother who was in college,
Hmm.
came home from college and walked into the same family room. Well, everything always happened in this family room, and asked my father and I to turn off the TV and he wanted to talk to us. And he told us a story. And he said, I was on an LSD trip. And I called out on the Lord and I asked him to come into my life and to save me. And he said the Lord instantly sobered him and took him down off this trip. He'd been on one a year prior, and it took him 9 months to get off flashbacks. And this one was done instantly. And he says, I just wanted you to know the Lord just did all this. And you got to understand, this was 1970 by this point, and my father this is 1970 world, and he either disciplined us with the belt or the fist.
Hmm.
And that was the way it was. And literally, if he had known Bruce ever touched a drug, marijuana didn't matter. Like he knew he's probably drank with his buddies at college, but that was a wink wink. You don't even talk about that in our family. But now he just walked in and talked about drugs, and you don't make a joke about that. Bruce didn't make jokes like that because my father would have beat him within an inch of his life, and that's more literal truth, you know. And so my father's jaw hit the ground, my jaw hit the ground. We just were like, so for the next day and a half, I hounded Bruce. I said, how did you meet God? I put one and one together. They equal two. God spoke to me. He loves me. You just talked to God. You met God. How do I do this? You know? And so for a day and a half, and he tells me the gospel and tells me the scriptures and repent of your sins and ask the Lord to come into your life, and he'll come in and he'll live in you and he'll seal your spirit with his spirit. And he told me all these things because he had heard the gospel elsewhere, not in the churches, the denominations we went to.
Hmm.
And so, for that day and a half, I'm just constantly praying. I'm repenting of my sins. God, forgive me. Come into my heart. Come into my life. Bruce always got Star Spangled Banner, the fireworks. It was the 4th of July. I got nothing. Zero, zilch, nada. And I'm going, all of a sudden, it's like, all of a sudden the devil's going to grab me. And all of a sudden it's like, it was all a lie. God doesn't love you. You just did what Bruce said. He is not going to love you. God, I don't know what you thought you knew, but now that's baloney. And I bought into that belief system. Don't we all listen to the wrong voice
Yes,
sometimes?
yes, at times I agree with you. I've actually had that same experience. And actually, my workbook talks about that. Listen to the right voices because at times I believe it's the enemy that's trying to attack us and to steal that peace that we have and that joy and that opportunity of coming close to Christ. So we hear these voices, but they don't bring peace.
Right,
You know that it's not from the Lord. So that's when you have to wake up and recognize, is this something that's going to build me or is this trying to destroy me? Is this trying to put me down? That's when you know whether it's the Lord or whether it's, something that's definitely not the Lord. It's a demon
right.
so we have to be very careful, mindful of where we're at in our
We
spiritual
do.
life.
We do. I'll need to read your book, and you can read both of mine. My second one actually deals a lot with hearing the voices that are, because there are four voices we can hear. We can hear from the Lord, the
Yes.
enemy, ourselves, or the influence of other people. Those are the four voices we hear. And the problem is the one of the enemy and ours sound the same because we
Mhm.
were raised by the God of this world, the enemy. And so he taught us to run like mice, to run a maze, and he'll poke us this way and we'll run. He'll prod us another way, we'll run the other way. He'll ring a bell or a buzzer and we'll respond. So we were trained by him to respond. So all he has to do is whisper in our ears and go, hey, you know, you didn't hear from God. You need to go get mad. You need to go lash out. You need to, and we'll just take right over. We'll take our voice and we'll just think it's us. And now we're going to just go do all the wrong things because we were trained the wrong way. And that's what the Bible calls the old man, the old nature, the flesh. So that's where we were trained, right? That's why God wants to change us to the new nature.
Yes.
So here I was, and now I heard this voice, saying, it was all malarkey. Go crazy. Just go, do whatever you got to do. And so I have all these crazy thoughts built inside of me now. And, on top of my guilt, what do I do? Now I'm angry at God, who I thought loved me, but now he's not even there. And, so now I'm just getting growing anger. And so I had just turned 16 and I wanted to get a motorcycle because I'm dying, but I believe if I just had the wind blowing in my face when I'm riding down the road, that it would make me feel better. I would feel free for what time I had left. Well, to get that motorcycle, I had to talk my father into buying a cheap motorcycle for me. And to do that, I had to get a job. I believe that kids should get jobs. So
Oh
he
yeah.
wanted me, to get a job, pay him back. Well, the only job available in 1970 was food handling, working in, a little restaurant or whatever, fast food. And to do that, I knew I had to go to the county clinic and get my food handler's permit. I mean, I'm analyzing all this stuff because now I know that if to do that, the food handler's permit is an X-ray and a blood test. Well, the X-ray is going to show this rock hard tumor in my abdomen,
Mm,
and the blood test, depends on how extensive it was, may show the cancer. And so,
wow.
saying hello to my wife just walked in.
Oh.
They can go out. We have the fan. My wife and my 12-year-old daughter and some animals. So if you hear a little in the background, well, that's life. That's family life.
Yes.
So I to get that, so I'm analyzing in my mind, okay, to do that, to get the motorcycle, to get this end goal, my secret's gonna get out
Mm,
because now the X-ray will definitely show the tumor inside of me. It's growing big and hard. It's going to, the blood test may or may not, depends on extensive, will show it coursing through my system. So, and if they see the rock hard tumor, they might want to do further blood tests with the blood they had to go find out the cancer, right? Normally, you might not look for cancer, but once you see the tumor. Well, cancer doesn't preclude you from handling food, right? It's not contagious. So the next week, my food handler's permit comes in. I've got the motorcycle now. I'm having the wind blow in my face and don't feel as free as I thought, but at least was better than nothing.
mm,
And I knew now my secret's going to get out. My father's going to know. My father was this hard rock, very left-brained, math and science. Probably didn't even cry that I could see, at my mother's funeral.
wow.
Uh, but I knew it affected him. So I'm thinking, well, maybe he can reach out and put his arm around me. Not literally, because I don't think he could do that, but figuratively, try to comfort me. Maybe it's too late to get medical attention. I don't, he could decide that. I didn't care at this point. I had the motorcycle. So the next week, I came walking into the living room and I saw my father's car was home and he's usually working 16-hour days. And I walk in, it's a hot April day and in Ohio, and he's in the living room burning what he calls trash. Before I walked in, though, it was another one of those I knew because I knew because I knew he had gotten the letter that told him about my cancer. And so as I walked in, I'm like, okay, maybe this is the time we'll have our discussion. And I walk in the living room, and as soon as I walk in, he flips this letter into the fireplace
Ah,
instantly. That hit me wrong. Like we're not going to talk about it. You just flipping it. So I got really sarcastic. So I went,
yeah.
well, what's that? What you doing? Why you burning a fire in the middle of the day on a 80 some degree day in the summer? Oh, I'm just burning trash.
Mm,
Really? We don't need to burn trash. Yeah, I just clean it up and burning trash. I said, oh, okay. Well, what's that you just flipped in there into the fire? Nothing. I said it looked like a letter. What was in the letter? Nothing. So I'm thinking,
mm,
well, he has to process it. I've been processing this for 6 months. He is just now, right? He doesn't know I've known for 6 months. I thought, okay, let's just give him a little time to process this. He's analytical. The next week, I came walking into the living room. His car's there. There's another car in the driveway, and I come in and wondering what's going on. And Tommy, come in the living room. And here he's got himself and these two insurance agents sitting there. And I'm going, huh? Like in my mind now, I'm getting really confused, starting to get angry inside, deep, you know, not just at God and everyone else. Now I'm, what in the heck? You know, what in the heck is he doing here?
Mm.
And I'm like, so he goes, well, and he goes, Tommy, I want you to meet these guys. And he goes, I know you're young, but you should have a life insurance policy when you're young because that way it grows with you. If you start when you're young, it doesn't cost as much and it grows with you. And I'm thinking, what in the world? This guy's pulling fraud, on the insurance. And it's
Wow.
like, and I'm like thinking to myself, well, maybe he wants enough to bury me and get a case of beer to drown his sorrow, right? Now, first of all, we had the money. He was upper middle class. He could afford to bury me. But yeah, he just buried my mother.
Your mother?
Sorry, my
Yes.
mother. Wrong word.
Yeah.
Buried my mother 6 months prior. And so, okay, maybe, maybe he just wants enough to cover that. So I just played along. So the agents are asking all these questions. And when it gets done, the agents go, now, to grant this policy, we need Tom to go see his doctor and get a clean bill of health. My father jumps in. Oh, no, 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 no need. No, 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 no. Tommy's in sports. He just had a physical. He gets a physical every year. He just had one 6 months ago. Right, Tommy? Now, that was the only thing he was telling that was the truth. So I agreed. I said, yes, I just had a physical. Well, boys' physical back in school, back in those days, was a height, weight, blood pressure, turn your head and cough.
Most
There's
definitely. Yes, it was
there
not like what they do right now. And
right.
definitely, we don't want the audience to lose the second part of this episode because the time is already counting on us. And I definitely don't want to lose you halfway because the second part is just amazing of what he actually ends up doing, how you respond, the approach that you take. And I want the audience to stay with us. So we're going to actually get ourselves off of this link and we're going to use the same one. There's no problem and we could just reconnect again. So I cannot wait to see you again, Tom, because you have such a story. Thank you for staying here with us.
Thank you.